Shock dart, but he's able to man through. Makes it
win anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won.
Strap yourselves in. It's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused.
That intro always makes me smile. Welcome everybody to Press 4 to Defuse, your weekly stop shop for all Valorant news and discussion. I am Nari Mizuki, and as you can see, Mike is not with us. We don't have a studio. I have cat ears. Everything's topsy-turvy. Yes, okay, the new Mike. The new
Mike's in the middle of the ocean on a boat somewhere, so...
That explains...
Screwing his fingertips. Screwing his fingertips.
Podcast for. Of all of the things to miss a podcast for, I didn't expect it would be to go outside to the level where you are literally on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Yeah.
Well, I can't say I'm not jealous. Anyway, so I'm Nari. I'm going to be hosting for today, and let me introduce our guests. So we have the regular Ryan and the irregular, I suppose, Van Silly. Van, how you doing?
Doing great. Actually, irregular is a great definition. I'm like irregular bowel movements, right? It's just once in a while I appear, and then suddenly it's just going to be like, you're going to feel it.
Nice. Alrighty. And on that note, Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. You got to bear in mind that Van's also left his stream on for 8 hours last night.
That too. I just realized, dude. I had so many messages this morning about it, and I was like, yeah, I actually hosted Bren, and then I went to bed, and I did not stop my stream. Thankfully, my camera wasn't on, just in case, but everything's all good. Everything's all good, Nerd.
It was funny, because I saw it this morning at like 10 o'clock my time, and it was like, oh, Van's still streaming. He's like burning a midnight oil, and then I turn it on, and it's just your like screensaver basically going in, so I knew exactly what he had done.
I think it was Vance's attempt at the subathon, like what Ludwig did, and then
no way. Way too old for that. Way too old to get that done.
Lord, tell me about it. All right, well, let's jump straight into the episode because we have a lot to cover. We're not going to be talking too much about like Valorant news, so to speak, like competition and so on, because like nothing's happening. We're all in that very depressing lull after Masters before VCT actually hits up again. So we're going to be talking Rostermania. But before we jump into that, Nerd Street Gamers has some massive news. Live events are back. There's been a massive boom in Nerd Street Gamers' popularity and how well they've been doing online over the last year. And now with COVID restrictions lifting, live events are back in action. Guys, how do we feel about this? Ryan, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's worth adding. I think the main event is going to be like Winter Championships, which are in January 2022. So it's not like next week we're going back into it. There's still a bit of a time adjustment. But to know that it's on the cards and that things are naturally getting back to normal is a really cool feeling. It might suck. I might not get to cast the Winter Championships this time because I'd have to fly to LA. So it would be super cool to see people. Actually, yeah. I mean, if Nerd Street want to pay for my flight, they can go for it. Otherwise, I'm happy to see some of the other NA casters get a shot to cast from a studio. So I'm super thrilled that this is happening, and the excitement around it is super cool.
Right, you already had to do you got to do a live event literally last weekend, and you got verified. So isn't that good enough at least, man?
It's like chasing the dragon. I need more. It was so good. It was so much better than casting from home.
Let us NA peeps have our things too, man.
Yeah.
Ryan is only satisfied if he has a giant board to play with. Otherwise, it's just not as much fun.
Pretty much.
I couldn't bring it back on the train, unfortunately. So.
Aww.
At least light at the end of the tunnel, right? To have lands come back, and Masters 3 is going to be on land, most hopefully. We got lands that just happened last weekend, lands coming up in July. I think it's just a great thing as well for Nerd Street Gamers to just hop on that bandwagon of live events coming back. And again, that normalcy that Ryan was talking about, it's definitely, it's a feel-good moment.
And it's about time. So guys, if you want to find out more about that, head on over to the Nerd Street Gamers website. Tons of news articles and information there for you all to bite down on. But we're going to jump into some news of our own, starting off with the North American Rostermania. So much is happening. We're starting with confirmed roster moves. So this is things that have obviously been announced. We know that they are happening. First and foremost, everyone kind of saw this one coming, so we're not going to really discuss it too much, but 10s to Sentinels, and it wasn't $5 million. Vance, what do you think?
I thought it was gonna. Again, I said it the other day before. I thought it was gonna be 10 million as we joke around with it, but I think the final value was 1.25, if I'm not mistaken. So that is coming from what the loan plus the buyout and the salary. So I think it's good things. It's confirmed, and it's nice to see that Sentinels are going to be continuing in full force with 10s in the roster.
I think the 1.25. I think it's a steal, honestly. I think that's a really good deal for Sentinels to get him, because not only is he just one of the most poster boy players of North American Valorant, he's just one of the biggest content creators on, TikTok, Instagram. I see him on TikTok all of the time at the moment. It's crazy. So having him be so popular across all of the main channels, this is a thing that's only going to last after his player career retires. He will still be in the scene. We know that he can do content because that's what he did for the longest time for Cloud9. So it's a big deal for Sentinels. Credit to Jack and Cloud9 for not trying to push up the money. There was a lot of talk about contract jails and all that, which I don't think was necessarily helpful nor true, because I think Tens was still happy where he was. But the fact that they loaned him out in the first place and then sold him for not an extreme amount of money, it's still $1 million, but I mean, look at League and all of the other games, it's still quite small in that comparison.
It's still big,
everybody's
though.
thrilled to see it.
1 mil is still big for a game that's like a year old.
A brand new game, yeah.
So
I think it's just like we've seen Valorant grow so quickly that I feel like we kind of know where it's going. You don't want to make those big assumptions it's going to be the biggest esport in the world, but considering Sentinels will probably want to be involved in Valorant franchise leagues potentially in the future, I think that kind of confirms them a spot at that point, especially if they continue to be the top team in North America.
I think for a brand new game, this is definitely massive and definitely going to improve and increase as we go on. Hopefully not too many teams try to buy 10s again in the future, because it's just going to grow exponentially, and I just feels bad, man. All right, let's head on over to our next team. That's going to be Immortals. Jonah P is confirmed. We did discuss at some point that Nature had been kind of bench for a little while, and now it looks like Jonah P, who has been around for a little bit, is going to be heading on into the team. We've got a frag highlight. I like this. That was very loud.
I think this is actually a great addition to Immortals. Jonah P has been one of those guys that has been under the radar, I feel, because just Complexity in general is a roster that's been under the radar and not talked about too much, except if you're following more in that tier 2 scene. And for Jonah P to join Immortals, and I think to have that new IGL as they have in Bossy, it's gonna add a lot to what Immortals is currently looking for in terms of firepower. So I think this is going to be looking pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it reminds me, the best time for Complexity, I think, was during First Strike. Maybe a little bit towards the start of this year, but I think when they brought in Jonah P and Sharky is when they looked the most cohesive and had that firepower. Obviously, things haven't worked out very well at all for Complexity since. Jonah P was one of those players. He goes to Immortals. We see Profi coming in as a trial player for Complexity, which looked really good for them. But overall, I think it's a big loss for Complexity, but a great player that deserved to be on a potential tier 1 roster, I'd say.
And just to add a bit, I wonder what Jonah P is going to play, right? Because usually I think he was playing a Sova for Complexity.
Yeah.
And I don't think you want to replace Gangsta out of that role. And if he's going to be replacing Nature 1-for-1, is he necessarily going to be playing the Sentinels? Because maybe that's the thing, or we'll see if Immortals is going to come out with a brand new composition.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that. And this is actually going to bring us into our next one. So he was kind of filling in for Nature. So just following that train of thought, we're going to be heading on over to Gen G, who Nature has been confirmed to be joining and replacing Win, which to me is a bit of a surprise, because obviously the agent thing, which is something you were just mentioning, Vance, for Immortals, that same kind of train of thought follows along here for Gen G. So what do you think? How's that going to work out?
Yeah, I think it's going to be definitely different for for Gen G. I feel that Gen G are going towards a direction where they may not need like an operator every single round, and they need a little bit more depth in the agent pool. So now that you have Nature being able to join in, like he was playing Cypher at some point, he was able to play. What else was he playing? I think he was playing a Killjoy, he was playing a Viper, I think, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So I think that's going to add a lot in terms of like, okay, depending on what map, how can we play this? And we need that a little bit more from Gen G so far, because they're so close, actually. Like, I think, again, you're looking at their qualifications almost getting into the NA Masters one, or at least they were in that one. They were on the right path, but they were just missing a little bit more. And I think it's that depth in the agent pool.
I think for me, having Kusta and Nature on the same team is really interesting. They're both like really clutch, more supportive players than anything.
Yeah.
But kind of like you sort of mentioned, Sam, when you lose a player like Quinn, who was that Jet, and you bring in a player like Nature, who has a very similar agent pool up until now with Kusta, one of those players has to step into like a duelist role, which could work out tremendously well. Like, I think they're still very new Valorant players transitioned over from Counter-Strike. So I think there's still room for them to pop off on different agents that we might not have assumed that they could play because they just played Sentinels. And most people just assume, right, that if you play Sentinels, you can't really play anything else, which I don't think is true for either of those players. So yeah, this it still has a chance, depending on how they do it in Berlin, to actually qualify just behind Sentinels if they can actually have a good run. So it's a cool move, and this Gen G team clearly wants to be a top dog in the region, but it's a shame how they've always seemed to struggle. They're always a little bit below.
I definitely could see Kusta as a duelist for sure. I think he's got that. He's got that skill set.
I just wonder if they don't, go the liquid route. No duelists. We vibe with that. I don't
That's
know how
doable too.
likely
That's
that
doable
is.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against that for sure, because if you're looking at how the meta is kind of like evolving too, it's like the more utility you have into your kit, and the more you could do deniability at beginning of the rounds, mid rounds, and play pulse plans. I think it's a good play to not play any duelists right now. It's not the solution that's going to win everything, because just look at who won Masters 2, right? They didn't play a composition that was 0 duelist, and then again, Liquid only got 4th place, right, at that point. So it's doable, but it's not the right solution yet. But it's still potent.
There's a lot of still tweaking. I mean, a lot of the pros have actually come out and said, well, we don't think that the meta has completely defined itself yet. It's still only a year in. Things are still changing. Agents are being tweaked. New agents are being added. So, there's still so much room for growth and improvement. And speaking of growth and improvement, I love these segues. They just fit so perfectly. TSM FTX FE. Try to say that one 10 times fast. The female team of TSM have just confirmed their coach signing. That's going to be Zek coming in. He was trialing. Now he's going to be the head coach. The only thing that kind of, I wouldn't say bothers me, but it's just like a little strange to me is, so when they announced it, they then tagged Athena and was like Athena and the team or whatever to show that it was the female team, instead of just having a name for the female team, TSM FTX FE. No one's gonna say that. But anyway, how do we feel about this? How much do we know about this coach, and what do we think he's gonna bring for this team?
I think it's going to be a great addition, actually. I think I remember Zek from me casting the Counter-Strike Go days, and he was like a player for Mobility Gaming, playing with Davey, another known Counter-Strike Canadian player, but Zek, I think, is American. But he's had some great experience playing in like the mid-tier of Counter-Strike Go. Once he made the switch over to Valorant, we saw his name under teams like Rise, I think, and Mamba Mode Gaming. And I think he, just because of his experience in CS, also have been a coach in CS back then too. He does have that experience in terms of like managing a team and helping out with the strategies, which I think is going to be a great addition as well for TSM. Has he done anything that was really Notable? Anything that's notable right now in the Valorant scene? Not yet, but sometimes you don't really need to have the plethora of medals and trophies to be a good coach, because we know a lot of good coaches right now that don't have that under their belt and that they're able to help a team quite well. So I think this is still going to be a step in the right direction for the TSM women team.
Yeah, I think that there's a strong chance for TSM FE to win the next game. Changes overall. Cloud9 White obviously having some roster changes. It was a while ago, so I'm pretty sure they've adjusted quite nicely to it at this point. But I do think it's an interesting one, having a player pretty much move from being on active rosters with Mamba Murder Ghost to then go to be a coach, right? You look at coaches like Dream, who's always been a coach and did Overwatch stuff, then moved over to Valorant. I think this is going to be really good for the team because he has actual experience in the server. He knows what it's like to be a player. And I think having that knowledge of Valorant, of playing in the main circuit, is good to transition across pro players who also have their own experiences with it. But I think the predominant amount of TSM FE come from Counter-Strike, right? So they've been together quite some time as a team. So I feel like they've got over that, oh, we know how the abilities work and all that kind of synergy, right? They're set. But I think Zek has a lot of experience playing up against these top tier teams. So he'll probably have a thing or two to mention that might come in useful. And I think this is the thing that maybe pushes TSM FE to be better than Cloud9 White. Because I think it's going to happen. This is going to be the event it happens, I think. The Dignitas one.
We're not going to have to wait terribly long for it. The qualifiers start next weekend, and then the main event is at the end of the month, so we'll find out very soon. And it's actually, I think it's quite pertinent that you mentioned C9 White and the roster changes. Like, a lot of people don't realize this. I actually saw in one of their more recent games, everyone was spamming, oh, where's Katie or something, and everyone was like, oh, Jazzy is her sub or something, and I was like, no, you don't actually know. Jazzy was on the team since day one. Katie came in because Jazzy was underage. And now, now instead of having that 6-person roster, it's back down to the 5. But Jazzy is perfectly capable. But as you kind of pointed out, she hadn't really been playing with the team for a little while. So this is a great opportunity, combined with having some new brain power in the server, to try and wrestle that title away. TSM had been getting very, very close in previous tournaments, although C9 White had been kind of a runaway. But yeah, if there was ever a time to do it, this is going to be it. So heading on over to our next change, that's going to be LG. And I was somewhat surprised by this, so I'm curious to hear how you guys felt about it. But Stella and Thief have been benched from the Luminosity roster. Ryan, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think this happened a couple of weeks ago now, but because of Masters 2, we never really got to sort of touch on some of these, like the Nature one's been around for quite some time. I feel that this is an important one because it might just pass a lot of people by overall. But the fact that we're seeing Thief being dropped from the roster, when I remember doing like team in the tournament videos with Van Silly, and we're looking at players like Thief and A Pro for LG as the best players in the region at that point. So more than anything, it's just a massive fall from grace and surprising. I know LG's not been performing as strong as they used to. It was them and Exet that were leading the line for quite some time as teams that had just entered into that S-tier level. But it's only Exet that stayed, and barely in some cases as well, right? So seeing this, comparing it to like January, February of this year, it just feels like the darkest timeline for LG overall. It's sad, but it's understandable considering the results.
Dude, that's Stellar gone. That's also their IGL. And just looking at these two names, when we're looking at Luminosity Gaming success too, I even think about Stellar. Maybe he wasn't really that player that was consistently putting up the numbers, because when you're talking about LG, you're talking about Thief, and you're also talking about a Proto pretty much at this point, right? As a duelist, and that's the opener and the closer between those two players. But then Stellar had some great moments where even playing as an Omen or as a Sage even helped LG get that. I think it was the victory in was it the Winners' Championship, or maybe the end of 2020 when they started winning something, right? So and Stellar was like a key component into that as well. So to see both of them leave, I think there has to be like a really big reason as to why. Maybe both of those players are being poached, or LG has found two replacements in an IGL and a duelist that could really fill their shoes. off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything right now, or anyone right now, rather, that could actually replace them in terms of the IGL and the duelist. Again, we're talking about free agents such as like we did, probably is the biggest one that I could think of, but he's only played like a Phoenix on Haven. And when you're looking at IGL, there's potentially maybe Cutler, maybe that could join LG. But is that going to be the route that Cutler wants to go as well? We don't really know. So I'm looking forward to see what's in store for LG and what they'll bring out after. But it's definitely some devastating and shocking news to see those two go.
Now, I might be reading a little bit too much into. Oh, go ahead.
I was just the only thing I wanted to say is we've seen a lot of teams as we're going to go over like dropping out of the scene. I have a feeling that LG is probably going to be one of the other ones that falls, just because it's going to be so hard to rewrite that ship to the point where they're a force to be reckoned with again. So I hope that they stay in, but losing players like this, and like Van said, there's not really much to bring in when it comes to other players. It might be a revolving door of players coming in, and that's usually the first sign of a team opting out of Valorant. So fingers crossed that's not the case, but I can't help but have that feeling.
Yeah, just on that kind of poaching point, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but usually when it's a poaching situation, the type of wording will be along the lines of, we wish them the best in their future, whatever. And this one was like very specifically, it's our loss that not every team composition works out, or something to that effect, which kind of sounds to me, again, I mean, it's social media speak, so it could mean anything, quite frankly. But it does kind of allude to a potential replacement. So I'd be curious to see what they're going to do with that. Thief was a massive surprise for me. That being said, I don't think he'll stay on the market terribly long. So hopefully he gets snatched up.
That's why I think along the lines of what Ryan is saying, like if teams are starting to see a revolving door, that's maybe a sign that they might fold. But at the same time, if a team is a consistent revolving door, it's also due to the fact that maybe they're good enough to be able to build young talent and sell them to keep the org alive and actually continue to have good results. That could be another point. That could be another angle where, again, I think Immortals is one of those organizations that does it very well because we've seen so many star players go through that roster and are still playing tier 1 teams, and Immortals still stays around because I think with the buyouts or the trades that they have, then they're able to get a little bit more to fund whatever they need to do within their org. So that could be another business thought from an organization standpoint.
Well, onto Ryan's point of teams leaving the scene. Our very first one of the show, there are a couple, and that is going to be E-United. E-United has gone boom. Big boom. Sag boom. How do we feel about the boom bands?
I mean, they still want to stick together, right? As Toki mentioned in his tweet. So I'm happy for that. Just sad that definitely E-United is going to be one of those that those orgs that unfortunately is going to be not necessarily the first to fold, because I think I think about Dignitas, Space Station Gaming, and now probably more teams will start dropping off as the year progresses into 2022. And it's just unfortunate. I think as I mentioned before, if you're trying to be a revolving door, or you're trying to find success, you have to find some sort of success. And if you actually picked up a team where, unfortunately, they were so close to, making it maybe to the top 16, top 8 of one of the qualifiers, but it's still not enough to get the buzz out and to get more clicks into your organizations, more buzz around that, and build that branding, that potentially as a business standpoint, you have to fold. And it's pretty much probably going to be the same reasoning I'm going to have for the other organizations that we're going to talk about later on. But I still want to wish the team currently together in E-United, or whoever they are right now, I think it's FPL, as they're mentioned before, FPL. to stick together. So I think they got, second place or third place just yesterday over the Nerd Street Gamers Open. So I think that's really good that they have the skill set. So if any other orgs wants to come in, then that's still a potential that they could pick up.
Right?
I've got nothing else to add on that. No, not really.
Bases covered.
Yeah, I think it's just a team that never had the best results. I think their last tournament that they played was like the monthly May that we casted Sam like at the end of last month, and they lost to Rise, who came second overall, so it wasn't a bad loss to have. But it's not an org that's taken the world by storm, and I can fully understand why they'd want to opt out, especially when it's like, are we going to be really big contenders for a potential franchise? No. Is there any point? You know, like there's so many orgs that are doing much better, that are more invested in the Valorant and Riot scene overall. Can we do anything? Not likely, without spending a boatload of money. Do we want to do that? No. Then we should probably remove ourselves from the equation. It's sad, but like I said, we're only going to see that more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mimi tweeted this out. Evil Cat, one of the other casters over at VCT. You know, the laws of transitive properties. She said something along the lines of FPL took more maps or more rounds off of BBG than Sentinels did, and therefore FPL are the second best team in the world. So, you know, there's potential. Anyway. Moving swiftly along from that, I will say that it does make me very happy, and I know I'm saying this amongst many, many NA people, but it makes me very happy to see that there is an NA org amongst the EU orgs also going boom. If it was just EU, I would be immensely sad, and that's going to segue us, yes, into EU. First up, G2. And now this is something that we've been kind of talking about for a while. It's been hinted at for quite a while, kind of the shark swimming in the water after the debacle that was VCT for G2, but it seems that they have in fact managed to snag Nukia and Avova from Heretics, as well as Coldamenta from Ascend. Ryan, we'll start off with you. What do you think about these moves?
It's a weird one. I think G2 looked the best when they had Aussie in that roster, and of course they have brought in world-class players at their role. Nuki's one of the best entry races in the world, I'd say. Avova, one of the best secondary IGLs and one of the better control players in Europe. It is just the Mixwell and the Piff that I'm a little bit more concerned about. I think the rest of the team is insane. And the funny thing is they haven't necessarily got off to the best start, at least judging off recent performances.
I think on paper though it still looks pretty good, right? I still believe in Pith. I still believe in Mixwell. I know that they bring a lot to the table, and I as I mentioned with you, Ryan, we had a conversation about this. It's more in terms of like Coldamenta or just all of these five need a little bit more time to basically build that synergy to be able to evolve, and that when Coldamenta understands the play style of the four players that he has at IGL at this point, things will look pretty good. Because if you look at Pith, if he's staying as a Cypher, he's pretty good as a Sentinel player, right? I know people will question a bit in terms of Mixwell with his Jet and as a duelist, but if he's actually going to start playing as a second duelist or actually play like an operator on the attacker side, which means you're still going to give that responsibility of the entry fragger for Nukia, then it could work out. I think this roster will still look pretty good. Avova's still going to be really good in his role as well. He's not switching out from his smoke agent. So I think they just need a little bit more time for that synergy and they'll be back on top.
It's good to see that G2 maintain a sense of humor about it. They were actually memeing on themselves after losing to Finest. Not the end of the world, though. I agree that they definitely need a setting period. Like when you make jelly and it's all watery and you got to stick it in the fridge for like 6 hours or something silly, and then it becomes something good. So we got to give them a little bit of time. I think that this first tournament might have been a little bit too soon off the bat. And VCT is going to be where we really start to see what they're capable of. And I just really hope that this time around EU gets double elimination. Because I maintain that with double elim, at least one team at Masters is different. But we'll find out more of that as things progress. Next up, so we spoke about Ascend, obviously with Coldamenta having left Ascend to go to G2. But there's been a bit of a swap there. Musical players, I suppose. As Ascend leaves, Zeke will be taking up his mantle on the G2 roster. Vance, what do you think?
I actually don't really have too much of an opinion going into this one, just because, yes, we know Zeke as well from his stint over at G2, but what is he actually going to bring to Ascent? Has it been going well when they've been screening together? I have been following enough into that roster to predict what it's going to look like for Ascent moving into the qualifiers for Masters 3. But, I mean, if it's a good enough name for Zeke to be able to make it into Ascent is no threat. I think they'll still be able to get something going with that addition. I've
heard good things about how well Ascend are doing at the moment. I mentioned this to Vance before. It's a team that's probably going to fall off a little bit, or at least most people would assume, from Masters 1, with all of the NBS IGL in as the coach rumors and all that happenstance. So
Yes.
hearing this roster move, losing a key player like Coldamenta, and still hearing that they're doing quite well, it's a good home for Zeke to be a part of, because I feel like he was really hard done by on that G2 roster, and I hope that he does well here. I think it's Bone Cold that's IGLing for them now as well.
Yeah. I think I saw that confirmed somewhere as well. It's a pretty exciting move. I think it's what makes me happiest is that this does seem to have been like kind of a trade situation. So nobody winds up homeless at the end of it. Everybody's got somewhere to go. And hopefully this is a step up for both of those teams, which is the most important part. Because as Ryan said, Ascend had a little bit of a dip after Masters 1, and it was a little bit disappointing for everyone watching. So we'll see if they manage to turn that one around. Now, we spoke about Nuki and Avova from Heretics, so we'll just continue on that train of thought. Artis and Patatek. Artis, one of the players that I was most surprised to see leaving G2, along with Patatek, will be moving over to Heretics. And Heretics also pick up Monster from LDN United. And on top of all of that, there's also a rumor that Alorante, I know we're not in the rumors portion, but it all just kind of fits snugly together. There's a rumor that Alorante is potentially joining them as well. This feels like a complete roster overhaul. Ryan, what do you make of it?
It's a tough one, really. Heretics haven't done all that well again since Masters 1, since First Strike. I think Artis and Patatek are great players, but the thing that I want to see from them overall is just to stick on an agent. Artis is going to be playing Sova. Patatek honestly should be on duelist, but Alorante, if he goes to that roster, is a pretty good duelist himself. Monster is a great Sentinels player. Played on the same team as Magnum Enterprise way back when. So seeing Fnatic versus Heretics is a nice little grudge match between the two players. But it remains to be seen, honestly. I'll save my review of them until we see them in action, because it could be great, but it also could be pretty terrible. Hey, there it is, Lebibab, or whatever it was called. Backwards Baby Bells.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we were talking about the last trade between Zeke, Ascend, and G2, it was probably like a trade going on. I think this is another one between Heretics and G2 as well, with Artis and Patatek. And even when the first rumors came out, the rumors came out in the article that said that Heretics weren't really ready to sell those players, and they didn't want that roster to blow up. So it means that there's potential that they were real winners coming out of this one too, because you could still get a lot of potential and firepower out of Patatek and Artis, but you also have the bag that comes out with it, because you probably get more value of trading Nuke and Avova to G2 than G2 has of trying to trade for more value with Artis and Patatek. So I think Heretics comes out the winner out of this. Will this rebuild help out? I hope that it's going to work. We'll see when the time comes.
I love seeing how chaotic rosters are at the moment, as everybody kind of inches towards their last chance saloon, really, to get into the champions at the end. I mean, I know there's the last chance qualifier, but like this is the last big boy event circuit vibe. And everybody's really just gearing up to it. They want to try and confirm their spot as quickly as possible. Because if I'm not mistaken, Sentinels is the only team with a guaranteed spot. So everything is still up in the air. But we're going to be moving on to our last 4 little bits of information about EU. There's a lot of boom. So Honk disbanded. Big Sag there. A lot of talk about potential signing with 2 different orgs. And both of them kind of went belly up. And the team decided that, well, it wasn't worth it to stick together as a free agent team. Vance, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, again, you mentioned that the next few segments are all about these booms. I think it all comes along the same thing. It's like you've invested early into the scene when the scene is very new into Valorant. You're trying to hopefully get that roster that's going to be able to make it into the qualifiers and even further, if you can, into the master stage, and hopefully even win it. But when you're not making it to that the close stage, you're not making it to the playoff stage, you're not making it out of the group stage, you can't even make it there, then that's where the investments for some of these organizations start to realize is like, oh, well, maybe we're operating in the reds at this point, and we had to figure out where we want to focus our our credentials and where is it going to still be in Valorant or not. So I think when we're going to talk about these next ones, it's all going to be the same pretty much, unfortunately, at this point. In terms of the players, if you're looking at it, there's nobody that really talked about being poached or the roster imploding in itself. So it's really between a full roster and an organization themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably move on to the other ones as well, because like Entropic being one and then Ballista being the other. I don't think they're too surprising hog-wise, right?
That's it.
Yeah, it was a little bit sad to see Entropic go as well. And then Ballista was one of those teams that had made such a massive impact towards kind of Masters 1, and then also just dropped off the map a little bit. And Entropic never really seemed to get their footing.
They always had tough games, man, Entropic, when they had to move into the like the final stage to get it into close, or I guess the group, or the play-ins, I guess, as they call it in Europe, right? So it's open to play-ins. So they're always like one match away or something like that. But I think it's also the unfortunate issue of the BO1s and the cutthroat circuits that Europe has always had compared to what we've had in NA. That makes it difficult for, you know, these aspiring teams to try to make it through and get something going, right? Yeah, so tough luck to those guys, and we hope that it works out for at least pugging it and then making it. I always love those type of storylines.
Well, a potentially exciting announcement after all of the big old booms is the Supermassive Blaze, which is essentially a Turkish super team, the way it's been described. That this hasn't been like tweeted as far as I know, and their Twitter has like nothing going on. It's not even their full name. It's at Blaze Esport. But this is from VLR, and it's pretty exciting because the two names that pop out to me, of course, are Pora and Turco. Ryan, you're going to know more about this than probably either of us, so why don't you give it to us?
Yeah, you've got Russ coming from BBL, Turco coming from
exactly.
Oxygen, and Pora coming from Heretics. Brave and Izzy are actually like the backbone of the team from Kafala, which I think have some points on the board for Turkey, but not all. They're not the team to go far. So yeah, this is a scary team to come in through it. You've got BBL also picking up Fred, who looked amazing in the Campus Clutch tournament. He just literally domed people constantly. I don't think he really cared. He just enjoyed really making people's life a living hell. So I think that this is a team that if you're watching some of the streams, or at least keeping an eye on the schedules and how these teams are performing going into stage 3 and obviously EMEA, this is a team to keep an eye on, because they on paper look incredibly scary and possibly the best team in Turkey, which is already pretty stacked for teams at this point.
Yeah, because even for me, like the name that popped out for myself is Russ, because when I was trying to watch these like catch up to the European scene and see what is going on here with Team Liquid, whenever BBL played Team Liquid, Russ was the one that was always popping up for me on their kill feed, playing as that Jet. So I think in terms of you know, we always talk about firepower and whatnot. I think they definitely have it. I think that the Turkish scene somehow, I don't know what's in their water, but they're able to just frag out all the time. So I think this is definitely going to be a scary team to look out for. Is it going to be a team that's going to be able to surpass BBL on Oxygen? I believe so as well. And I think going into the qualifiers, into like one of those 4 spots for Europe, there's a potential at this time that we could have a Turkish team take one of those spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
100%.
Turkish region has always been super strong. I mean, I remember way back at the start of the year, quite a few teams going, yes, they're in a different region to us, because playing against Turkish teams can be somewhat terrifying. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this. Now, as per usual, this should come as no surprise to anyone, but we are somewhat behind on our schedule. So we are going to just noom through the rostered rumor changes. Of course, rumored roster changes. And of course, as that, you know, it's in the name, they are rumors. So we'll see if any of these come to pass. First and foremost, potentially, Envy going to be dropping Caboose. What do we think?
Sag. I'm always
Big
along the school of
Sag.
thought that I want Envy to continue to to do well with the roster that they have. Same thing as I'm like on that copium with TSM as well, where I wish it was the original 5-man roster that's going to be able to continue and come back in Masters 3. But to see this happen, super sad for Jake to see that. But you know, a change needed to be made when you're always at the 4th or 5th spot in these qualifiers, right? So we always talked about that little hump that he needed to get through, and hopefully with the new 5th that they have, then it's going to be the case if that's the rumor.
Who would be the 5th, though, is the question. We did. Like, that seems to be the big one. Jammies, as well, is a free agent on the market. I mean,
somebody on chat said Thief. That's a good idea, yeah. Somebody in chat said Thief, and I thought that was a good idea.
I get the point where it's kind of like Envy, they've been great for so long, but they've not been good enough to actually represent their region. And every time that they do well, it's usually for qualifiers that don't seem to have too much impact anyway. And when the big tournaments come around, they tend to falter quite a lot. So I'm not surprised this change has come in. And I think Caboose is probably the player that you can take out of the equation for Envy overall, because their roster and who plays what is easily their biggest problem. Like Caboose to Mummy to Victor now, those 3 players constantly switching who's playing the Omen, for example. So maybe now Caboose gets taken out the equation, they bring in another controller player. We can see Victor being able to play the Reyna, the Phoenix, what he usually plays, and then seeing Mummy consistently on the Jet, or putting Mummy on the controller and having another duelist come in. They've got
I think we do would be a great
now,
one.
and I think, I think it's like getting a good controller who's quite vocal and kind of IGLs a little bit, but not too much. I think that's the best cause of it, because Envy, very much like G2 before, right? It was just amalgamation of who plays what, and they're constantly changing. Unfortunately, Caboose had to be the fall guy for it, but I do think that no matter who they bring in, Envy will look a lot stronger because of it, because everybody knows what they're doing, and it stays, hopefully, somewhat consistent.
Well, speaking of jammies, so we don't have an image for this because it all comes off, basically someone was streaming and the friend list pops up and it shows all of the FaZe clan in a scrim, well, in a custom game, so we assume it's a scrim, and the only person missing is Marv. Who's there? It's jammies. Now, while there could be a slew of reasons for this, the big rumor is Marv out, jammies in. Ryan, what do you think?
So I think Marved out is always a common cause of concern. It's constantly brought up. His name is constantly added into the alleged ESIC investigations, right? So I think that when you see this kind of rumor, it doesn't really imply the best stuff for him personally. Maybe FaZe just want to get away from that bad PR as well, even if it's still up in the air on whether it's a whodunit kind of approach, whether he did or didn't. I think Jammies would be a great addition. I think he did himself proud for version 1 in Reykjavik. And I think he's the kind of player that would sit nicely on FaZe. He's mechanically very gifted. He doesn't come from Counter-Strike, so there's no set mindset on how to play the game because he was on Fortnite beforehand. So I think naturally that mindset would gel in very nicely to the 4 other Overwatch players. But we'll have to see for that. I think it's an interesting one, but Mav's name is always going to be brought up as somebody who we might not be seeing going into stage 3 because of reasons not to do with Valorant at all, unfortunately.
Yeah. Everything Ryan said plus question mark is who's going to be IGLing. That's pretty much going to be my question mark for that one and the next topic.
Stellar question mark? There's an IGL on the market. Who's going to pick them up?
It's not a bad pickup, but if the rumors is that Jammies is staying with FaZe, then of course unfortunately the Stellar is going to be out of the question.
Yeah, but not as we said for the next one, because the next one is going to be T1, and again this is Dazed benched. It says here potentially Spider, but there was like a follow-up tweet that said no, Spider is actually going to be sticking on the roster. So for now, it's just Dazed who seems to be in danger of getting Das Boot. Vance, what do you think?
Super sad. I've always been a fan of Dazed in terms of like his the way that he IGLs or the way that he frags in CS and in Valorant. But I think when it comes down to the team chemistry, maybe there needs to be some change at some point in there. Although any type of rumor that has happened and that was surfaced in the past with fraud between Dazed and and Spider and all that has been squashed with Spider saying everything is all good in the hood. So that's all good in there. So maybe it's not about the chemistry, it's just about trying to find the right results. And with T1 investing in the fact that, or investing into Ants coming into North America, then there's potential with that rumor that you kind of want to bring Ants a little bit earlier than anticipated so that you could actually get more firepower with T1. That said, though, it's, as I mentioned before, if Ants or ANS is the one that's coming in, then who's going to be the one that's going to be calling for T1?
Yeah, I have no idea on that one. Like, good luck T1 on deciding that. Really, it's. I'm not when I talk about like with FaZe as well. When it comes to like the Counter-Strike mindset, it felt that was kind of what Dazed was a bit like. That he hadn't fully adjusted to, very set in his ways almost, and very vocal about his ways as well, which has caused problems to no end for T1. So we'll have to see on that front, but there's always going to be that question mark over the old guard Counter-Strike players, even Brax, right, who we'll get onto in a second. Those historic Counter-Strike players of when maybe not living up to the expectations of Valorant. Not all of them, but some of them, and I think Dazed is certainly one of them who everybody raved about him when he came over, and I just haven't really seen it since.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Brax, yes, indeedy, it's going to be TSM next up, and the rumor is Brax gets benched and Bang comes in. Who the hell is Bang, Vance?
He's going to be one of those players that has been just rocking into the rank scene, just being good on the leadership on the leaderboard. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Bang also played with OTW at some point. I could be wrong on this one, but I do remember seeing his name like back in like the summertime when the tier 2 scene was trying to build up at some point too. So he hasn't really had a chance to really shine yet into a roster. So if the rumor is now, well, I mean, the rumor is already there. There was a screenshot that came out of it on Reddit a few months ago, maybe a month ago actually, with Bang on the roster with the 4 other players and no Brax. So this is just more rumors that's coming back into light. Is it going to be confirmed now that it's from George Godes with Upcomer? Potentially. What's going to happen with Brax, though? That's where I'm a little bit more on the question mark side, because they just brought him in. He's only played like 4 games. They've had okay results, but they still were trying to figure things out because they brought him in and he played right away when they didn't have an answer for TSM of what wasn't working in the first place, because you just slotted Brax to play a Sentinel role just like Hayes did, and then you're having similar results. So it's not, the issue wasn't really on the lineup, it was more on the composition. But I mean, if you have if you have good potential in Bang, why not give it a shot too when you also have $100 million for the next 10 years?
The only thing I wanted to say about Bang as well is that he's a controller player, so we might not see Sub Rosa on the Lurking Omen anymore, which would be a shame, but he has been playing a lot of Sky recently, so not a surprise. You just got to feel bad for Brax. He can't catch a break right now.
Sag. Well, some fun potential. We've had a lot of Counter-Strike players coming over, some more surprising than others, and the next in the slot is potentially going to be Brez. Now, there isn't actually, like, no one's actually seen him playing and scrimming and whatever. This is, like, all speculation based on he hadn't been doing very well recently, you know, since Ethan and who was it? Tarek were no longer in the team, so the team kind of went boom, and now he hasn't been on Steam for like a few weeks or something, and now everyone's like, oh, what about Valorant? So I don't know if there's any like actual basis to this potential rumor, but what do we think about Brez possibly making the move, right?
I mean, I wanted to more ask Van Silly, like, if there's any other Counter-Strike players that he could see move over, really, because I think Breezy is a really good example of somebody who very much fits the bill. It wouldn't be any surprise at all. A lot of people talking about him coming over to the Evil Geniuses team for Valorant, but I think that he's frankly would be worth a lot more to some of the other tier 1 teams that are looking to fill in those spots. So other than Breezy, who else do you think is like, because a lot of people bring up Elige, right? No way Elige is moving over to Valorant. He's joked about it, but there's a lot of people that are flirting with the idea, but some more serious than others. So I wondered who you thought was good on the cards.
Oh, man, I don't think there's currently anybody that's currently in the top NA scene that's currently in a team, I don't think we'll want to make the switch yet because it's still pretty healthy in Counter-Strike. The exception that I see with Nitro coming into Valorant when he left Team Liquid to join, I think it's more to the fact that he was becoming a father, right? Or he was about to become a father, is a father now, has to be home for the kid. And if you want to survive in the North American scene currently in Counter-Strike, you have to play in Europe in a longer circuit, in a longer season. Therefore, you have less time at home. Now, as Valorant is still new, and he got to secure a huge amount in terms of securing the bag with 100 Thieves, and he gets to play online, and there's no franchise or anywhere where he has to leave home, it makes sense. Then you look at Tariq, he got cut. He got benched from EG. It kind of makes sense that he wants to explore his options and see if he could continue in CS or if he was going to make the switch into Valorant. If you're looking at Breezy, for example, right now, he's still playing with EG. They're currently playing in the IEM Summer Championship 2021. They're currently in the quarterfinals. So I don't see why he wants to make the switch right now. I don't see why Elige wants to make the switch because he's still with Liquid. And you know, I guess he has a little bit of a footing at home in North America in terms of his relationship. But I think overall, I think they're pretty happy where they are. I don't see anybody else that's currently in an active roster in North America for Counter-Strike that wants to make the switch into Valorant.
Now, we had a couple more. We're obviously moving over to the EU region. And I do want to blitz through most of them, but there is one that I did want to actually get a little bit meaty with, and that is OG. Now, there's been a lot of interesting discussion around that. We had Fizzy and Shed, who were supposedly going to be joining the roster. Everything was sorted out, except supposedly for the actual contracts. They then left whichever teams they were with at the time, only to be told, actually, we're not going to be going with you. And it looks like Trex and Destrian from Honk are going to be moving into the roster instead. Now, this is actually something that's happened in EU before with Batty G, who was supposed to be moving to a team, fell through, he'd already left his team, and now he sits not homeless, but worse off than he was to begin with. I am a little concerned about this trend that's been going on right now.
It's grimy. I think
many
it's
good
kind
free
of
agents.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, it's borderline, like not even borderline. I'd like to say that it's actually unprofessional in that sense that if you're going to ghost a guy saying that he's going to be joining a team, but then ghosting to the point where it's going to say, well, forget it. Now that we're going to answer you back, unfortunately, we might be going with somebody else and not going with you. When apparently it was like, hey, if I understand the timeline correctly, they even had like addresses and getting ready to get their gear shipped from OG so they could get their jerseys and stuff like that too, and then didn't, right? If I'm not mistaken. And if that's the case, and it just kind of sucks that they got the short end of the stick, what happens then for their, like, they can't go back to their original team. They probably got replaced at that point.
Yeah.
So they're just going to be stuck in limbo until they're able to find that footing again.
It's a massive shame, like because Shed is like Twiston. Both of these players are like not quite Durka levels, but they very much could be on the right team of just instant impact fraggers. Fizzy, I don't know that much about. I've never really seen him properly play, but he's got a bit more tenure in Counter-Strike as well. OG have just managed to piss off multiple people in the Valorant scene already, and they've barely been in it a couple of months as well. So not the best look for them overall. It's really unprofessional, like Vansili said. But I am happy to see Trex and Destrian get picked up. Trex is a really good fragger. Destrian is one of the best IGLs and controller players in Europe, I think. He's very underrated and was great on Honk. I'm just sad overall that Honk supposedly heroic deal kind of fell apart as well, because if that had gone through, then we would have seen Fizzy and Shed on this roster.
Yeah. Just overall scuzzy behavior, and hopefully that straightens itself out. This kind of comes back to the whole thing I think about. So you, Vansili, we were mentioning before the show that you were getting a little bit of heat over what you were saying about the C9 thing, and I saw a little bit yesterday where people were saying, oh, but what's the point of tweeting about it? And like, you have to keep people accountable, you know, and this has happened twice now with orgs in Europe, and it's just, it's not on. It's unacceptable. So
Yeah, that's it.
hopefully
That's
we'll
it.
start to see a shift in mentality there.
And,
All right,
and to
we got-
clarify onto that point
ahead.
too, though, because we're talking about tweeting about things and we're holding orgs accountable. At least in this topic, we're holding OG accountable as to like we should open the communications between what's going on to make sure that it's a smooth transition or not for either of these players. But on that other topic, for me, it wasn't about tweeting to actually take any sides on who's right or wrong in terms of the topic of this whole VOD thing. It was more to make sure that we actually bring up the topic that VOD leaking and competitive integrity is actually fragile and it does exist right now, and that if we don't tweet and talk about it, then it's just going to continue to just slide through, and that it's going to happen behind closed doors. And that is a topic that it needs to be shed to light, not on C9 or not on Insights.
All right, we're going to breeze through the next two because both of them are fairly unlikely to actually happen. So we're not really going to discuss that one. But first up was Nip, Ninjas in Pajamas. JD was rumored to be leaving, but it looks like he won't be. And the latest rumor is that Eccles is in and Existence is out due to a hand injury. Again, not too sure this is actually happening. We'll wait to find out more on that one. The other one, of course, is Alliance. Cadavra rumored to be leaving. Potentially to fill in for JD on Ninjas, but of course, you know, JD's not going anywhere, so it's all just a bit of a mess. And I mean, this article in particular came out about a month ago, so yeah, rumors are as rumors will be. The next one, however, is some interesting potential there, and that's going to be XL. This was the team. Their very first signing was David P, originally of G2. He'd actually been like standing in for G2 for a number of tournaments before they actually signed him. Eventually, they signed him only to drop him later. This was, as I mentioned, the very first signing for XL, but it looks like he's going to be out along with Biggie, and XL might be bringing in Mo and Vicious, of course, all rumors. Ryan, why don't you start us off? What do you think of this?
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of this. I don't mind David P. I know he rubs people the wrong way, but I do take issue with Biggie. Allegedly, he's cheated in Counter-Strike and stuff, and from speaking to a lot of people, he tends to be a player that people aren't particularly fond of. So I've never really followed XL all that much, and just not really paid too much attention to this roster. You've got players like Ali in there that used to be on HSD, who is exceptional. Vicious used to be on that roster as well, so seeing him butt up again. And it's nice to see Mo being able to get back on the roster after being dropped from Fnatic, because he's a great pickup. So I need to try and work off the top of my head what the roster would be, because you've got Ali, Vicious, Mo. Who are the other ones? Because it's a pretty mixed roster overall. You've got Honeybee that used to be on Purple Cobras, and then you have Happy, which is another great player, but another player that seems to have a lot of people say that he can be quite toxic and rude, allegedly. So, I mean, having him, David P, and Biggie on the team must have been very interesting. But Fields also coaches
we joked about that. We joked about that when the roster was announced. Like maybe that was XL's thing. They were leaning into the toxic. It seems that they're leaning back out.
They had some good results, and they're a big org. They're in the LEC, so they clearly want to be involved in Valorant 2 in Europe. So I like this roster more than the old one, but I would have preferred this roster to just be HSD, to be honest, at that point, because that was a hell of a team. So I'm excited for this one. And real quick as well, seeing as we touched on Nip and Cadavra, the Eccles thing not likely happening. I know that he tweeted out another like looking for team tweet, and a lot of people like Kriya and Emil replied to it saying, you know, thanks and good luck. So maybe they tried him out and it wasn't a good fit, or Existence managed to get a bit of help with the hand injury, because that is a thing. He's spoken about that before. So that isn't out of the concept of things that might not happen, right? That's possible that Existence might need to retire because of a really bad arm injury, because he's had that in the past. So we'll see on that one. But Nip, I hope they keep things together, because this is the best roster they've ever had, and it would suck to see it change up prematurely again. And so I hope it stays.
Yeah, I was hoping to see another a turning point and another storyline for David P to be able to play with Excel. So if it turns out that he's going to get dropped, super sad to hear that. I have seen Happy at events in CS:GO. I don't see the rumors around his personality. I think he's pretty chill. But I feel that if Excel wants to go in a direction where they're trying to win, because I don't think we've heard about Excel that much ever since they came together, right? Even in their own smaller tournaments that they participated in, they didn't get the victories that they wanted because we don't hear about them. We don't hear about Excel winning. We don't hear Excel getting into the top placings. For me, I usually tend to want to believe what Nell says. He's a great source in terms of getting out the news in the Counter-Strike scene and also for Valorant. Eccles could have been a great IGL to replace Existence if he's going to go through, let's say, surgery for his hand injury or whatnot. But if it's now confirmed that they're saying good luck in terms of him looking for a team, then we'll see what's going to happen. Are we going to continue with Existence for a bit? They still have a bit of time to figure things out, right, until VCT 3 start.
Mm-hmm. All right, that is basically going to wrap up this episode, everybody. So thank you all for joining us. We didn't really touch on any upcoming tournaments because most of them are quite small. We'll have another episode before the big ones start. But there is the ESL Premiership on at the moment, and Nerd Street Gamers are still running their weeklies as well. So do keep involved, keep watching those. There's a lot of great Valorant to watch. A huge thank you, Vance, for being our mic for the day.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. And we are going to... Okay, I'm being reminded by production. Yes, this was going to be the wrap-up thing. We have so obviously last week was Valorant's first birthday, and it was a very, very emotional, momentous thing for a lot of people. So we've had a couple of casters, myself included. I'm really sad. I didn't have my cat ears at the time of recording. I literally got them today. But there's a beautiful little reaction video, a thank you, really, to Valorant for their very first year. So we're going to be closing off the show with that video. I hope you all enjoy it, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same place, 1 p.m. EST, usually, here on the Nerd Street Gamers channel. Do follow us down below on our @, and we will see you next week. Have a wonderful week.
They've done it! Sentinels are the Masters 2 Reykjavik champions, and they do it flawlessly. They didn't drop a single map. They have made history here, Riv, because they are the first global champions.
Let's start from the very beginning. This game has been amazing. And to put it completely bluntly, Valorant changed my life.
The opportunities have been endless for this game, and it would be like an understatement for myself at the very least to say that Valorant is anything other than home. It's family, it's friends, it's action, it's excitement, it's hype, it's storytelling.
It's a lifestyle, and it's a way that I've met amazing people and made incredible new friends. It grows more and more every single day, and I'm so proud and privileged to be a part of it and to be witness to its growth.
Every week this game changes from beta to now. I have learned a new thing about Valorant every single day, and it's the teams that end up evolving. It's the game that changes because Riot is so intricate with what goes into this game.
It started off as the next big thing, and we're getting to see that unfold right before our eyes, and I could not be more humbled. I could not be more excited to see where this game takes us.
Here's to the future of Valorant, 1 year on and growing ever stronger.
And I am so happy and so appreciative to be here. And I hope to entertain you guys for years and years to come. To Riot, to VCT, to really everyone else involved with the Valorant project, I tip my cat ears to you to many, many more years.
So thank you to everybody that I've played with. Thank you to everybody that I've worked with. And again, this is just the beginning.